There you go, much better.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, this is the first of maybe several interviews with you, and I just wanted to, for the sake of everybody in your life who might be interested in hearing about your life, I want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, you just had a birthday, right?
Yes, I was 86 years old. If I'd known I was going to live that long, I would have taken better care of myself. I'm named after my third son, John,
Yeah.
and
Why didn't you, the full name?
John Knowlton Williams.
That's not my name.
No, it's John.
Who's your third son? Oh, that's me. Oh, I get it. Okay.
I have no idea who Knowlton is,
Yeah. It's a family name, right?
but I go by Jack.
Yeah, you do. You do.
My mother, I think it was, it said, I'm not going to call the kid Knowlton, so it named me Jack.
So you go by Jack. How many other things do you know about yourself? And your family, so your offspring. So rattle that off, because you have that photographic memory. So let's hear it.
Well, my family,
Yeah. Who's your family?
going back to before I was born.
Well, let's start in the present, and then I want to go back. Yes.
Okay.
So let's talk about who's your family right now. Your kids, your grandkids. How much do you know about your family right now?
Well, right now I'm 86 years old. I have 4 sons, 10 grandchildren, and a bunch of great grandchildren.
Well, go as far as you can. Tell me their
Okay,
names.
I can't go beyond great. Anyway, Michael is the oldest, and he's now 66 years old. And then there's Steve, who's 63, I think, and John, who's about 61. And then there's Greg, who is 57. So there are 4 sons, and the daughters just didn't happen. That's all there is to it. They just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got a bunch of very nice daughters-in-law and granddaughters that are they're just fantastic. So pretty nice.
Yeah. What about your grandkids?
Well, starting with the oldest, Michael went into the military in the Air Force. He did pretty well in school, in high school, and then he went away to college at Purdue, and I think he was 19 years old when he wrote a couple letters to us. He said he was he was doing summer intern work down at the NASA Space Center in Houston, and while he was down there, he took a summer course, a college course, and he met a young lady named Carrie. And so when he wrote a letter and said he was seeing some lady named Carrie, I said, well, I'm really happy to hear that you're having some social life. And he writes back immediately, Dad, this is not a social life, this is a girl I'm going to marry. I said, wow, he just got down there, he's 18 years old, and maybe he just turned 19, he's the girl he's going to marry. I said, okay, well, fine. And next thing I know, he wants to bring Carrie out to California to meet us, which he did. And she was a nice young woman. So anyway, long story short, Michael married Carrie in a service down in Lamarck, Texas. And we all went down there for the wedding. John didn't go right away. He was in the drum and bugle corps in Sacramento playing bighorn. So he didn't.
Me?
Huh?
You mean me? Yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't go right away. So there was just Steve and Greg and our family down there for the wedding. And the wedding was down on Lamarck, and they got married, and he was 19 years old. Only 1 year older than me when I got married, 18. So anyway, Mike and Carrie, he spent 21 years in the Air Force. They had 3 children. First of all was Priscilla, who was born not too long after that, but she was born in 81. And Priscilla's been, let's say, just mentally challenged. She had some problems. So anyway, she's in a home down in Texas right now. And then later on they had Ben. I think that's our oldest grandchild. But anyway, Ben is now a lawyer in Florence, Montana, Missoula, Montana, and he's my little kid. He's 6'6.5", I think, and they have 2 children, and it's Asher and what's her Cora Bell, and they live in Florence, Montana. So there's his wife is Tiffany, and Tiffany graduated from Lamar. She graduated from school in Texas, in jurisprudence. Anyway, not the jurisprudence. Excuse me. She was a photographer. Anyway, a photographer. No,
Yeah.
Anyway,
He's quite the photographer.
so right now what she's doing up there, she's mostly acting as a photographer, and taking pictures and making quite a good income at that. So that's their family. And then the next one we have was Steve. He spent 5 years in the Air Force, and then he came out and he went to work for SMUD in Sacramento for a while, and then
Alexa, turn light off.
Okay.
Perfect. Oh, much better. Thank
and
you.
that was my wife talking. Her name's Alexa.
Yeah.
So anyway,
He's calling you Alexa. It sounded like.
so
Yeah, the light's much better.
anyways, long story short, when the kids were small, we lived for a while in Eureka, California. In Eureka, California, I worked for the Department of Employment up there, and we had 3 children, and then Greg came along later. We eventually had 4 sons. But while we lived up there and in Eureka, we had a circle of friends, among them Conrad and Kathy Mant, NDT, and they had 3 children, and we got together with them a lot. We camping, picnicking, social at night, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, their 3 kids were Debbie,
Mark and Joanna.
Mark and Joanna, and Debbie was 3 years old, and about Greg's age. So about Steve's age. So and then eventually when we, this is hard to do, John.
No, it's okay. It's
So
good.
anyway,
Are
anyway,
you still on Mike, or you're going to Steve? Or are you headed towards Steve now?
yeah. So we're coming towards Steve now.
Yeah.
So anyway, Steve was before he went into the service, he kept talking about this Debbie man.
Yeah.
This girlfriend of his that used to live in Eureka, and she was 3 years, and she was now an adult. He thought because she was the most fantastic person in the world. So anyway, he got together with her one time, and they got married before he got in the service. And after he got in the service, they were stationed first of all in I think in Spokane, Washington, and then eventually up in Alaska. And after they got up there for 3 or 4 years, they separated and got divorced. So then he didn't have any kids with her right away, and then he went back to Arkansas, and he was had a relationship with a woman back there. I don't need to mention her name. And then eventually he came back, and he met a few young women in Sacramento, but he got a phone call one day from Debbie, who was up in Washington State, and he got all excited again. He wanted to go, and they, long story short, they got together and got married again. And,
Gia already had Amber.
huh?
But Gia had Amber by then. Yeah.
Well,
Can you
and
get
so,
into that?
so anyway, they got married again. So anyway, she had a daughter named Amber, and then Steve and Deb were together for a while, and they had Adam. So there's 2 kids there. Anyway, Amber, as far as he's concerned, that is his birth granddaughter. But she had a different father. But he's dead now, and Amber, as far as we're concerned, she's just one of our grandchildren.
For sure.
Absolutely, and just a wonderful, beautiful person. And Adam, Also, he's done well. He's completed college. He's working as a computer programmer or something for a firm. And right now he's back up in Vancouver. It was in Texas for a while.
He's an engineer. He's an engineer.
Engineer?
Yeah, he does engineering, and now
Okay. Engineer, but he doesn't drive a train.
No, he designs. He's a designer. He's a
I know.
sharp guy, yeah.
I know. So anyway. That's three kids with Michael. Yeah, Mike. I didn't mention the third one with Michael. Michael had a third one named
Ginny.
Huh?
Ginny.
Yeah, Virginia. Named her Virginia because the time she was born they lived in Virginia, and Virginia Irene because of my dad who was married a short time before he died, a second or third marriage. The lady named Irene, so he married her. He gave her that name. I wish he hadn't, but anyway, her name's Irene, Virginia Irene. And then there's Steve had those two, and then John.
Uh-oh. Oh no.
John, the one I'm named after.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had several ladies friends. Several.
You're Jack, though. I'm John. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
My name is John. John Moulton Williams.
Yeah.
Didn't go by Jack. Anyway, the John had several relationships, and I don't know. He finally married one named Kelly, and they were married for 20 years or better.
Almost 30.
Almost 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
And they're
Over 30 years.
They're divorced now, but yeah, very, very nice family. They had two girls. Just real joy of our life. They're just really nice. It's Ashley and Whitney. And Whitney now have their children. So Ashley has two daughters. And you better help me on this one.
Kelly and Lily.
Kelly and Lily. Kelly after her grandma, John's wife, Kelly. And had two girls. They're now living back in Nashville, Tennessee. And beautiful girls. Not only that, they're beautiful inside and outside. They're fantastic. And they both live back there. And Trevor is district manager for Honda Motorcycles back in Nashville. And wonderful father. Everything I can see, it's just a wonderful father to the girls and good to her and all that. And Whitney went back there because her sister was there, and they'd always been the two daughters had always been just bonded the whole life, Ashley and Whitney.
Yeah.
So Whitney went back there because I think because her sister was there. So she's married to Todd, and they have a youngster named Charlie. Named after my dad. No, not really. His name's Charlie anyway. Yeah, and I guess I could say this if I want to, and I say he is just a fantastic looking kid, beautiful, handsome. Yeah. You can say that because he's mine.
Yep.
And let's see, do I have more sons? Yeah, Greg. Greg was born in Eureka when we lived up there, and back in the 60s. Greg was born in 64, I think, in Eureka. So he's now 57, and he's married, but he's been married a couple times. He's married to a lady, a psychiatrist, and we love her lots. She's just fantastic.
Kate.
Her name's Kate. Kate. She goes by the name Warburton. I think that's a professional name, or probably a prior name she had with marriage, but and just fantastic person. And so Greg has. Well, my memory's not getting bad when I get old. So they have two children, and they're Courtney and Zachary. And Zachary was just down here a couple of days ago visiting with me. Yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday.
Yeah, visiting with a couple of days ago.
He's a pretty great kid.
Yeah, he's completed university up at Western Washington in Bellingham, and Courtney completed university down at University of
Santa
California in Santa Cruz, and she's now working at something, teaching. I think she wants to teach school. I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she's in Santa Rosa, California, and I think Zachary's probably. He's got a really nice lady friend. They're not married yet, but I think they're probably going to be. And what's her name?
Megan? Is it
Megan.
Yeah. So then, tell me about what life was like growing up, going back to your childhood.
Is this working now?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
on. Yeah.
I was born. Yeah, that's for sure, right? Anyway.
Yeah, you were born.
in Concord, no, excuse me, in Berkeley, California, in January 1st, 1936, 86 years ago. And my mother and dad lived in Concord, California, but back then it was a small community, no doctor's hospital to speak of. So, I don't know, 50, 60 miles or whatever over to Berkeley. And so they had to go to the hospital over there. It was Alta Bates Hospital in Berkeley, California. And my dad was Charles. My mother was Ethel. And I guess I'll go back a ways. My mother and dad were from Chicago, Illinois. My dad's dad was a medical doctor, but he dropped out of being a doctor after several years. He was a children's doctor, and he graduated from Western Reserve University in Cleveland, and he was a children's doctor. But then he was into music. He loved music. He was a rich baritone, and he sang all over the place. And so anyway, my dad he wanted to be a musician. His whole life was built around he wanted to be a musician. He wanted to write music. He wanted to sing, and he wanted to whole life. And at that time, this new innovation of radio had just come into effect not too many years before, and he thought, well, maybe he could get into radio and the music and make a living that way. So, I think he was selling life insurance when they got married. I'm not sure, something like that. And my mother was working for Montgomery Ward in Chicago as a bookkeeper.
Wow.
And my dad had a choral group. It was called Metropolitan Singers in Chicago. And he even had some write-ups and Music News of Chicago said, Tudor Williams, my dad's middle name, Tudor, young Tudor Williams, is fast becoming one of Chicago's leading choral conductors. And I got a write-up on that here somewhere. And so anyway, he had this choral group. Anyway, my mother was like music, and she got acquainted with the group, and she came and she was one of their soprano singers in the choral group. Well, anyway, my dad was always a real super caring, loving, sentimental kind of person, and she liked that. And they got together and got married. And they just got married, and the wedding day they got into a Packard that my mom had bought and drove to California.
I never knew that. How old were they?
My dad was married on his 30th birthday.
Wow.
He had been married before briefly,
Okay.
to not a good marriage. My mother had never been married. She was 35.
Yeah.
And she didn't drive a car and didn't have a driver's license, but she bought this 28, 29 Packard Roadster. She bought that, and then they drove in that Packard to California. Several days getting there, and they went to Concord, California, where my uncle Ira, my mother's brother, lived with his family, and he had like 10 acres of ground there somewhere. So they had this shack on the back of the property, which my mother and dad lived in for a while, and then they bought their own place in Concord, 2-bedroom, whatever house, and they lived in that for a while, and that's where Ray and I were both born. Not in that house, but in Alta Bates Hospital. And then I think probably about the time I was about 3 years old. They moved. They came to Niles, California. Niles was a town on Alameda Creek, which is now part of Fremont, California. Niles is, but there's still a road called Niles Canyon Road, still there. It goes on up the canyon beyond their house, up through the mountains, and they went there and they started a small restaurant called the Maples. Well, the Maples, because I think there was 3 great big maple trees out there on the property, so I think they rented the property, but they had this nice store there, nice little restaurant there, with a gas station and garage, and mainly it was just a small restaurant, but it had hamburgers and coffee and all that kind of stuff, and also this was just the end of Prohibition, right? Just ended, and so they were able to sell beer and wine there. And so on Saturday night, sometimes they would have a little dance floor out back where some people came and danced. Now, to give you a little perspective here, the Niles Canyon Road they lived on, there were 2 bridges to get to where they were that led out of the town of Niles, led up the river a ways, and then there was another bridge that crossed the river, Alameda Creek again. They had to head up the canyon. So, which means there's 2 bridges and they're in between, along the river. But anyway, the county or the state or something came along later on to say, oh, this is stupid. Why do we have 2 bridges? Why don't we just put the road on the other side of the river and the other side of the creek and not get out this nonsense? So they did. So the end of that was that my folks' restaurant was on a dead-end road. No cars coming through. Before that, it was trucks. They all stopped there to eat because it was a nice place. Also, there was down at the end of the road where we lived, the end of Niles Canyon Road, there was a pottery where they made pottery things, and so the trucks that came back and forth into the pottery, they always stopped there to have coffee and whatever and chat with my mother, and mostly my mother. Mostly my mother, yeah, and then there was. For a long time, there was a group called the Tunnel Gang, and that was people working on the railroad on the tunnel. Several years they worked on it, and they all came there too for meals and stuff like that. So we had the Tunnel Gang, the Pottery Gang, and the truckers that came through. So they did pretty good, and I had a wonderful remembrance of Niles, California, of that place there. The garage. There wasn't a whole lot there, but there was a pit out in the garage where you could climb down into the pit and the car would drive over it and you could give lubrication and stuff like that. Anyway, and then there was one gas pump. So I don't want to go into a lot of stories about the gas pump, but I'll give you one, and that is the one gas pump there, regular gas only, was 18 cents a gallon back then. I know that because I saw it in a picture. And anyway, I was a little kid that was always getting into things, so I went out by the pump there, and there was a big hole in the ground there, and I took and put the water hose and stuck it in there, and turned it on, and let it run for a long time. Well, I ran water into the gas tank.
Oh my gosh!
And so some guy was. There's several people. The one guy that came, he got in his car, he filled up his car, and he drove away, and his car conked out. And he had somebody check on this, and there was water in it. So they had to pump the whole tank full of gasoline, pump it out, and I got talked to. I think.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, did you confess?
Huh?
Did you confess to
I didn't have to. They knew how it was. They knew which one of the kids did these kinds of things. So that was one little thing. The other thing really I'll never forget, and that is my dog Spot. And this is a story that's told to me more than once, and that is we had a dog Spot. He was mostly German Shepherd, mostly. But people said that when my brother and I would walk out toward the street, he would come out there and grab us by the seat of the pants with his teeth and pull us back from the road. And my cousin Bob Reedy told me that. He said he watched it happen. He wouldn't let us go out in the highway. So anyway, Spot was our
guardian.
And anyway, one day we looked all over for the dog, looked over and over and over, and finally we walked up on the railroad tracks and we found our dog with his head on one side and the dog body on the other. Boy, that was traumatic. Well, that was really traumatic. Her dog Spot.
Yeah.
So,
How old were you when you lived in Niles?
I think it was 3, 4.
That's you remember back that far.
Oh, then clearly.
And then when did you move from Niles?
When I think I may have just turned 5, but I may have not even been 5, but I just turned 5, and then we moved from there to Coloma, California,
Oh.
up near Placerville, Coloma, California, where you go to Discovery in Coloma. We moved up there to a rented house owned by an old lady named Nancy Vernon, and we lived in that house just a few months, but just long enough. I remember my dad planted a little garden with radishes and stuff like that, but we just there for a few months. And in the meantime, Ray went to school there as a first grade for a short period of time, and then when we moved, he had to go start somewhere else. So we went to this. We always referred to it as the ranch. It was out in a place called Fruit Ridge out, and it's now called Apple Hill, but back then it was called Fruit Ridge, out northeast of Placerville, about 6 miles. And moved out there, and we had 80 acres of ground, and on this old house that probably been built 100 years before, but an old house, no electricity, no plumbing, and we had a cold water pipe that ran from a spring up on the hill down to the house, cold water pipe. But there was no plumbing, no water in the house other than that.
So what did you forget?
Uncle Frank.
Well, yeah, we haven't gotten there yet. Was he part of Niles or was he part of?
Niles.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Niles.
So when you moved from Niles up to
Coloma.
Coloma, right? So.
And then out to Fruit Ridge.
Okay. Yeah. So there's this Uncle Frank you wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When my parents had the restaurant in Niles, it was along Alameda Creek, along the highway, Niles Canyon Road. Anyway, where we lived was a place where people we called tramps today. Today they call them homeless, but back then they just called them tramps. They were
Tramp means something different now.
homeless people. They're men drunks that were just kind of hanging out along the river or whatever. And anyway, these 2 men came by the restaurant where my mom was, and they said they were hungry. So my mom never turned anybody away that said they were hungry. So she fed them. And one of them, the guy was named Frank Walsh. That's the only one I remember, because I don't remember the other guy's name. But he ate, and then he left the next day. But Frank, it wasn't uncle at that time. His name was Frank Walsh. And anyway, Mom fed him, and then he had an agreement with her that he would stay there and maybe chop wood or something for food for a few days. Well, we found out he was a Spanish War veteran, and he had a small pension. You know, back then I think it was probably $20 a month, if that. And anyway, we let him live out in the shed out in the back for a while, and we fed him. And then when we moved from Niles later on up to Coloma and Placerville, he went up there too, and my mom found him a room downtown Placerville, and so he lived down there in downtown Placerville in the little one room, whatever it was, and he continued his drinking ways, and we heard all of a sudden heard from a roundabout way from him or whatever that he got married. We thought, what in the world? Anyway, this lady named Arabelle, or called Belle, she befriended him, thought he was a really nice guy, and so she bailed him out of jail and married him. And she said, now, he told her at that time, he said, look, I can never quit drinking. She thought at the time, well, I've known men before who drank, so I guess I can live with this. And after a while, when he smashed the window and then broke a few things, she said, no, I can't deal with this. She told Frank, look, you got to go. I can't deal with this. And he says, well, maybe I could quit drinking. And he did.
Awesome.
He quit cold, didn't drink at all for years. And so they were married. and decided that we would call her Aunt Belle, and we called him Uncle Frank, Frank and Belle. But they weren't relatives, but they were friends. So anyway, they lived in Placerville downtown for a while, and then they moved out on out of town in Cedar Ravine to a place, a little house that was owned by Jim Price, who was Belle's stepson. A house out there, one bedroom house that he owned, and so they lived out there. Frank and Bill lived out there together for several years, and he didn't drink anymore. I'll cut some of this out because later on when we were they stayed with us. They came down to Sacramento. Well, anyway, they came to visit us a couple of times after that out at the ranch when we lived out there. Now I'm calling the ranch because that's where Fruitridge, where we had this old house, and it had 80 acres, and there we had we got a cow, we got a few chickens, eventually we got a pig and stuff like that, and chickens. And but we said we had no electricity, no plumbing, nothing. And then what happened? That's where we moved out there. What happened in 1941? World War II. So we were living out there on this godforsaken place out of town, no electricity, plumbing, anything like that. And I started school at 5 years old. A place called Union School, which was about 6 miles out of Placerville, 5-6 miles out of Placerville. And I started there at 5 years old.
How did you get to school every day?
Well, believe it or not, half the time I walked.
Okay. Did you ever walk to school in the snow?
Yep.
Were you ever like cold and didn't have enough clothes?
God, tell me about it.
So literally, you walked to school
I didn't walk
in
in
the
it.
snow.
Very seldom.
Okay.
Very seldom, yeah.
Was there ever a bus?
That's
or
a
anything?
story about the person that says, well, when I was a kid, I walked 10 miles to school in 3 feet of snow. And I never had that. Most of the time, Ray and I would walk out to the end of our road, and some car would come by, Milo Carr, who lived down in another restaurant down there, and he had his son Bryce, and they would come by and they would pick us up, and then we'd get a ride in this old Model A Ford crammed into the front. We'd get a ride to school. I would say 9 times out of 10, but once in a while, he didn't come, and or some other reason, we had to walk. Well, the walk from our house to school was 3 miles. We walked it all ice cold, no matter what it was, because that's the only way we had to get there.
Must have taken over an hour.
Huh? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, at least that. And we walked all the way, but very seldom. Well, we did it once in a while, and then we had to walk home 3 miles.
Wow.
And I remember being cold. Yes. I also remember. I won't say peeing my pants, but yes, indeed I did.
But no running water and no electricity.
We had running water. It was a cold water pipe coming down from the spring up on the hill.
Did you think anything of that back
No.
then?
No.
No.
No. But when people talk about a depression, I don't remember a depression. We always ate. We always had food. Always had
What
food.
did you eat?
I didn't like oatmeal very much. We had that sometimes.
Oatmeal?
But we had chickens and we had a lot of eggs.
Eggs? Did you kill your chickens? You killed your chickens.
My
too,
mom
right?
did. I never killed chickens.
Yeah.
My mom did. Yes, she did. She killed the chickens, brought them in there and brought them on this chopping block, whack, I'll cut the head off. I never did that. I think Ray did it eventually, but not me. I don't kill anything. So anyway, we had a lot of chickens, and we had pigs for a while too. And my mom would take it down to the slaughterhouse, which is not too far away, a few miles away, the slaughterhouse, and they would butcher the animal, and I think they would either keep part of the meat or whatever the slaughterhouse did, but and then we got the meat. So we had a cow had a calf like once every year or so, and there was some more meat there, but the cow gave huge amounts of milk, just huge amounts of milk. We always had a big bucket of milk every day from the cow, milk twice a day. Cow's name was Daisy, and Daisy got out frequently and wandered around the neighborhood, and we had to go chase her down. So we had Daisy for milk, chickens and for food, and when my dad worked at a slate mine for a while, down a place called Chili Bar down Sacramento, down on the American River. We walked in a mine, had to go into the mine and get slate, chop slate. He worked there for a while.
Chopped slate. What?
Slate. Well,
Right.
slate was used for granules for roofs and stuff like that.
He chopped it?
Huh?
What did he do? He chopped it? He chopped slate?
Yeah. I don't know how they got it. I knew they used dynamite sometimes, but slate was just sheets of slate, and you make blackboards and stuff out of it. But I think a lot of time was used for granules for roofing and stuff like that. But he worked down there at the slate mine, on the river, American River, and worked there for a while. He back in the mountains, and then a horrible hard job, and then December the 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor happened, and my dad went down to. Mind you, he was 33. He was 33. He was 30th birthday. So this is. He was 40, I guess, pretty close to it. And he went down to the draft board and volunteered to go in the service. And they told him, "Well, we don't need you right now. You're too old."
Right. Yeah.
So then he wanted to find out where he could serve. So he found out there were needed people in Canada and Alaska to work on the Alaska Highway. So anyway, he went away and went to Canada for a long time. And he was working on the Alaska Highway. During the war, they were trying to push the Alaska Highway through to make sure that Germany or somebody else didn't come at us from that angle. So they had troops up there in Alaska. Anyway, he went up there and worked on that for a while. And then something happened where he came home. And they
I
told
thought
him
it was Alaska Pipeline.
he was working on a pipeline, which would be either oil or water or something like that. But I think oil. But anyway, back then he came back. The house he pretty much told them we needed him on the ranch to help out. So he came home.
Your mother told him that?
No, he told the people that he needed to go home.
Okay.
And so he came home and he was there for a while and they couldn't find any work. So he went back up there again. This time he worked for Standard Oil.
Oh, okay.
Again, pipeline.
Got it.
Pipeline. So he worked there for a while again.
So he went twice. He went first for the
Yeah.
highway and second time for the pipeline.
It was along the highway, but it was the first we worked for Bechtel, Price, and Callahan Construction Company, first time. Second one was for Standard Oil, mostly on a pipeline, and that wasn't oil pipeline. It was, it could have been, but anyway. And then he got into a horrible auto accident, and they thought he was dead on the highway, and
In Canada or Alaska? Or?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, back to White House, Yukon, Canada. And so he survived that, and they came home.
Go ahead.
Anyway, he had an auto accident up there, and they actually was out in the snow, and they thought he was dead. He was driving a vehicle at night and ran into a tractor, I think. It was dark and everything. I don't want to say he was drinking, but he probably was. Anyway, he came home, and
So in general, it's okay to say your dad probably had a drinking problem, but regardless of that, the things that really happened, right?
yeah. Anyway, I don't know but they had an accident up there, and bad. So anyway, he came home, and I think let's see, I think he found a couple jobs around Placerville, but mostly we moved to El Dorado, little town of El Dorado, out of Placerville for a while, and mostly tended bar.
Oh.
My dad tended bar, but it was just little short terms. Either place he went, like a place called Poor Reds out in El Dorado. Everybody,
Still there.
yeah, well, it was called Kelly's when he
Oh.
tended bar, but it was
Wow.
Poor Reds.
I did not know that. Wow.
So he tended bar there for a while, and then he tended bar at a place called Diamond Hotel in Diamond Springs, which was just a couple miles up the road. And Hod Lindbergh was the owner of that place. And Red, who had the place at Red, is his name? I don't know what his last name was. It wasn't Kelly, I know that, but nobody remembers the name Kelly's. But that's what it was when we first moved there. Anyway, it moved there for a while, and then he just had short-term jobs there, working as bartender, and I guess he's pretty good at it. And then they found jobs at grocery stores in Placerville, Worrell's Country Market. He went there and was working as a produce man. And then, as he worked there for a while, the owner of Worrell's Market opened a small place in Pollock Pines. And so my dad went up there. Actually, had his own business called Charlie's Produce Market.
Wow.
But he bought his produce from West Worrell in Placerville.
So everybody called him Charlie.
Well, the customers did.
What'd your mom call him?
Charles.
Charles. Okay.
You never called him Charlie.
All right. Anyway, he had his own business.
Yeah, for a couple of years. Ray and I went up there, worked with him periodically. We'd go up there and work, and he'd give us $3 every day for working. We'd stock shelves and do stuff at his place. It was just a produce market. It was out in front of a grocery store, but it was just produce. You know, and the people there just loved it. They all loved, hi Charlie, how are you? You know.
Well, tell me about. You said you mentioned Uncle Ray a couple of times. Tell me about your brother and sister along the ways. I mean, so they had you, and when they moved up there, your sister must have been quite young. She probably doesn't remember, but your brother remembered. I mean, he was.
Louise remembers a little bit of it.
Yeah. So tell me just a little bit about Uncle Ray and Aunt Louise.
Okay. My brother Ray was.
His first name, he's Charles, right?
Yeah, but he went by Ray.
Yeah.
He was 16 months older than me, that's all. Now, when you talk about three kids, personalities, Ray was the more serious one, the one that behaved the best, that accomplished the most, all that kind of stuff. And I was when I got in more trouble.
Yeah. The middle. Yeah.
I always got more trouble.
Yeah.
But I mean, a couple I just did bad things. I wasn't a bad kid. I just did things that kids shouldn't do.
Got you in trouble.
Got me in trouble, yeah. And Louise was probably born in '38, so
Almost 3 years younger, 2.5 years.
he's 2.5 years younger than me. And I think she still remembers a little bit of that, but not very much. So anyway, where was I?
You're talking about I was just asking you to describe really quick Uncle Ray and Aunt Louise,
Yeah.
because that's about the time when you all three moved up to Pollock Pines, right?
We never lived in Pollock Pines.
Placerville.
It was Placerville, but we lived for a while out at Fruit Ridge rural area, which is now Apple Hill. Apple Hill was an area between Placerville and Pollock Pines, and a rural area. And strangely enough, when we first lived there were hundreds, maybe thousands of acres of pear trees all over that area. Pears. It was called. Pears were the lifeblood of the whole area up there at the time.
Yeah.
Bartlett pears. Sometimes later, after we left there was some kind of a blight or something that came on and completely wiped out the Bartlett pear crop.
Oh.
Hundreds of acres gone. But apples were able to come in pretty good. And so people started raising apples, hundreds of acres of apples. That's why they call it Apple Hill now, because you go up there and they have, it's not as big as the pears were, but it's big item, Apple Hill. Then after we lived up there for a number of years, we moved to El Dorado, little town of El Dorado, a few miles out of Placerville, and an old mining town. And Ray and I went to school there a couple years in El Dorado, and then there just wasn't any work around that area, so we moved back into town, into Placerville, and I um, I went to Union School in the rural area for almost three years. Ray would have been the same thing, but he would have been great ahead of me. And we did in Placerville. I was in the fifth grade at the time in Placerville, and Ray was sixth. And we'd been there about 1 year, less than a year. And the mom and dad heard about it was right after the war. War was just ended, and they heard about emergency teachers were needed urgently all around the place, and so they heard about teaching up at Lake Tahoe. So they both went up there. They were just high school graduates to speak with. Went up there as emergency teachers, and when I was in the sixth grade, Ray was in seventh. We went up to Lake Tahoe. It was called Bijou or South Lake Tahoe now, and they taught school up there for one term. Both of them.
Both who?
Huh?
Who? Both.
My mom and dad were teachers.
Both of them. Wow.
Elementary teachers. But to just give it a rough idea, at that time, South Lake Tahoe, the Bijou, Al Tahoe, and then Myers, real small towns along there. Right now, it's mushroomed into a huge big city called South Lake Tahoe. But back then, little towns, and back then, the schools were just small schools, a handful of kids. But after the war, everybody just swarmed up there to Tahoe, bought land and stuff like that, and so they had a hundred and some kids for coming into the school. Well, you needed 4 teachers for that many kids, because before that it was just one teacher. So they went up there. My mom was taught lower grades. My dad taught the upper grades, and we lived up there. And anyway, like I said, I think they did a good job. But the thing was, you have to know how to deal with parents and stuff that they think their kid should have this and they should that, or they don't like the way you're teaching. And so about April of the year, they both quit up there and moved back to Placerville. Because
yeah, let me ask you that question too. So back then, what were the roads like? Because right now we have Highway 50 and it's 4 lanes on both sides or each side. What were the roads like? Wasn't it dangerous as hell?
Yeah, it was 2 lanes.
Yeah.
All the way up 2 lanes.
Really 1,000 feet drops and everything.
Yeah.
Were you able to get? Did they have roads cut out of the mountain at that point?
Yeah. But I echo some of they're called Myers Grade. It would just twist down the mountain on the other side down toward the lake. Give you an idea. We were coming back one time. The whole family was coming back from Tahoe to Placerville in our old Plymouth. We had a 36 Plymouth sedan. And my dad was driving. We're coming up the hill, up the summit, Myers Grade, and out of Tahoe. And we're coming up the summit, and all of a sudden, tons and tons of rock just came dropping down out of the mountain right in front of our car. Right in front of our car. And my dad, he just stopped the car and sat there for a few minutes. And he looked to see if he could get around it, and he found there was a way to around it, and then we drove on. Those rocks were so huge, it was half the mountain fell down. It would have killed us immediately. But that happened.
Wow.
He just said he was so like real unemotional about it that I could see. And it was 2-lane road all the way back. Yeah, it was heavy snows. They had to close the road for a while, but
I mean, it's scary now.
Yeah.
It's scary driving through there in the wintertime now. So I can imagine back then. Yeah.
We never thought much about it.
Just do it. Yeah. Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
I want to hear more personality traits about your dad and your mom. Which one do you want to start with? Your mom or your dad? What were they like?
Well, oh boy, I tell you.
They died such an early age.
Yeah, they did. My mom died. My mom died. She died first. She was 55 years old. But anyway, like I said, I think I don't know a lot about my mom's earlier life, other than she was born in Marengo, Illinois, outside of Chicago. She got a job after high school for Montgomery. Well, she worked for a while for Sears, but then later on with Montgomery Ward, as a bookkeeper. Bookkeeper.
So accounting goes way back.
Yeah, she was very good at math. So, but she was a bookkeeper, and so she worked there for several years. And in 1928, she took a train, choo-choo train, from Chicago out to Concord, California, where her brother lived, Ira, by herself, 28 years old. I didn't say 28 years old. It was 1928, which would be close to 30, I think, and came out to California all by herself on a train. And back then, trains were choo-choo-choo, puff-puff.
Yeah, it was a choo-choo.
Yeah, and all by herself, and she visited Ira and a few places around Southern California. And her sister Barbara lived out in L.A. somewhere. So I visited with her, and she took her first airplane ride on that trip.
Wow.
An open plane with cockpit, and it was 1928, and out of Oakland, California. It went up, circled around a little bit, and she said, "Boy, this is what I want to do. I love flying." So anyway, she took that trip, and they went back home. So that was about 28, somewhere in there. So that was 33 when she married my dad. But he worked as a bookkeeper for years. But I heard somebody else tell me that she had a male friend for a while named, somebody said Oscar or somebody, and she never talked about it. Never talked about it.
So she was a pretty private person, would you say? She's pretty
I
private.
don't know. She didn't talk about that.
Yeah, you never really got to have a close relationship with her, other than
Who?
her mother. Your mother. She was your mother, and she was disciplinary. And
Oh no, I had a very good relationship
tell me
with her.
about it. Yeah,
Yes, good relationship with her. You know, she.
tell me about it. You have any stories? Did she write? Did she read to you? Did she play with you? What did she do?
We lived out on the ranch. We had no plumbing, all that kind of stuff. Every single night, we sat in a chair in the living room, and on a kerosene lamp, she'd read to us every night. Uncle Remus, Billy Whiskers, Four Little Blossoms, whatever it was. He'd read to us every single night. Never forget that.
You did the same with
huh?
us. You did the same thing with us
Yeah.
growing up.
You remember every single night. She, yeah. She's extremely good, really a good mom. Beat the shit out of me sometimes, though, but
It was the way she was taught.
huh?
That was the
Yeah,
way
I know.
she was brought up, right?
You don't hit kids anymore, but back then, we got spanked. We did things bad.
Yeah. But did you get hit with a stick or a whip or a whatever? Did you?
Yeah, that's something called the strap. It was part of a harness from a horse, I think, but it gets used to that sometimes. But anyway,
Did you get in the most trouble?
well, I did. I'm sure.
What kinds of things did you get in trouble for?
I don't know.
You don't remember?
Not necessarily, but I think I looked for ways to get into trouble.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you?
Ray and I both got in trouble. But
Oh, you did.
one time we moved out to El Dorado, and while we were out there in El Dorado, a neighbor named Bill Tobin and another couple of friends, my mom went to work at the fruit house in Placerville.
Mm-hmm.
During the summer when you're packing pears.
Mm-hmm.
She worked there just sorting and stuff around. She worked there. But we didn't have babysitters. We were there by ourselves. Well, we was 3 and I was 5, whatever it was. We were there by ourselves all day long. And so anyway, this one day we guys got together and they said we're going to go swimming down at Weber Creek. So we walked several miles down there. Went down to Weber Creek with friends, and we went. We didn't know how to swim, but we went there, and we spent the day down there to Weber Creek, and then we walked home. In the meantime, I had left a note on the door. The guy was supposed to deliver blocks, wood blocks to the house. And I put, block man, put the blocks in the backyard. I wrote that on a thing, and then we were walking home like miles, 3-4 miles, walking home, and Mom came along. She'd gotten home while we weren't there. She took our pickup truck, 35 pickup truck. She drove all around trying to find it. She found us along the road. Well, Ray and I got the strap for that. Both of us did.
Left your where was your sister?
She said she was with us, but I don't remember that.
Oh, Aunt Louise said that?
Yeah,
Okay.
she had to be with us because we wouldn't have
She was
let
just
her
3 or
home.
4 years old.
We would not have left her home alone. But I
Right.
don't remember. I don't remember that. Anyway, and then there was a time when my dad he smoked. You know, he had some lighter fluid around the house in little cans of lighter fluid, and we thought it was great to take the lighter fluid and squirt it like that and then light it, which would have been could have burned the house down. But we did that. We squirted it onto the stove or whatever, and we did that. And the neighbor saw the fire, and they told my mom about that. So we got in trouble for that. Pretty much, yeah. Again, I took our cow out there. Our cow went out there with us, and the chickens were out there, and we didn't have any pigs out there, but I think we had ducks for a while. Animals. Yeah. And then El Dorado, we went back into Placerville, lived in Placerville for a while. And my dad worked at a couple grocery stores in Placerville. I worked there for a while.
So, when did you guys move down to Sacramento?
So I'm going there. So anyway, in Placerville, he worked at some grocery stores. My mom just did odd things. She worked as a dishwasher at a restaurant. Just menial things she did. She just did anything to feed us, you know. And so anyway, the jobs were hard to get. So meantime, first of all, I think my dad went to Placerville, Sacramento, and he got a job there with not Weinstocks, the drugstore.
Woolworths or not Woolworths?
Drugstore.
Like Walgreens.
Walgreens.
It's Walgreens?
He got a job at Walgreens for a while, and then after that he got that was minimum wage, I'm sure, and then he got a job with Sears Roebuck at their store, sales thing, and that was pretty good job. Pay was low. And then he got a job with Sacramento Army Depot, a federal job, paid much better, and he got a job out there with the Army Depot. And Mom went to work for the state as an intermediate account clerk for Department of Employment.
Right, EDD.
We wasn't
Later, I know.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's the department I retired from. But she was an intermediate account clerk. And for the first time in all of our life, things really looked up because they were making like $600 a month for the two of them, which was huge money back then, big money, $600 a month. Because most people, when I started with the state, I got $200 a month. But anyway, so they did pretty well for that for a while, and then my mom got cancer.
How many years had she worked for the state? Not very long.
I don't know. 2, 3. I don't know, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think? I remember this story about she did laundry and she actually got herself caught in a laundry contraption. Did that contribute to she might have gotten cancer from breast being caught? In
Always the reason why she went to the doctor first time was because she got her breast caught in a wringer at home.
Right.
A wringer washing machine.
Yeah.
And got breast caught in there. She didn't wear a bra, so it got caught in there, and she hit the crank and reversed it instead of just popping it open. Reversed it. And then it was just really. Then she went to the doctor right away, and Dr. Jean Bebko, a woman doctor, they started to talk about the old lady about her getting caught in the ringer, and Dr. Jean says, "Don't
That's
even
not
talk."
funny. Yeah.
She said, "That's not funny. Don't even talk about it."
Yeah.
So they watched that for a while, and then found out she had cancer. Well, anyway, they said the cancer was already there.
That's how they discovered it.
This aggravated it, for sure.
Oh wow.
And she died from breast cancer, but it was 5 years later before she died.
Took a while. Still,
the
it's in our family.
54. Died at 54.
They didn't have the same.
Huh?
They didn't have the technology they have now. They couldn't detect it early, but how did? Yeah. That was
Yeah.
Terrible.
Anyway, 54. So she lived more than 5 years after that, but she had her breast removed about 1949, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's too late though.
Huh?
It gone to the rest of her body by then, huh?
Huh?
It went to the rest of
What
her
was it?
body by then.
It was intraductal metastatic carcinoma. Metastatic means it was all throughout the body. Intraductal means throughout all the ducts, and carcinoma is cancer. So anyway, and then after she died, my dad was, oh my, just terribly depressed.
Yeah.
And he drank quite a bit.
Okay, so one of the things we left out is your mother's mother lived with you,
Matilda Reedy.
Matilda, and that's who your mother's full name.
Ethel Mabel Matilda Reedy.
Ethel Mabel Matilda Reedy. And so your grandmother's name is Matilda
Matilda Reedy.
Huber Reedy. Yeah, I've seen that in the genealogy. So did she live with you down in Naples?
Maple. Oh, you mean Niles? Niles?
In Niles, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know when my grandma came to live with us, but I know she lived with us in Niles. But at worship before that, I'm not really sure. But she did. When we lived in Niles, we had a little room or something near on the property there where was Grandma's house. She lived with us, and then when we moved to Placerville, she moved with us up there, and she had her own room in the ranch when we lived out at the ranch at Apple Hill. So Grandma lived out there, and she was in her 80s, and we enjoyed her. She read to us sometime, but not very much, because I don't think her reading ability was that great. But she lived with us, and she was just a really nice lady.
Why did you call her Chicky?
I didn't call her Chickie.
Oh, who said Chicky Charlie?
I'm going there.
Okay, sorry.
So anyway, while she lived with us there, we had chickens, and there were some little what they call banty chickens, the banties. We had a banty rooster, and we wanted to call that banty rooster. Wanted to call when I was born. We wanted to call it Chicky Tilly after my grandma, Matilda Tilly. And then we found out when he started crowing, we said, well, that won't do. The Tilly won't do. So we called him Chicky Charlie after my dad. Anyway, that chicken got so we'd open the kitchen door, whatever, and that chicken would come traipsing through the house and climb up my grandma's bed, climb right up there on her bed. Somehow, I don't know how that happened. I guess she fed him a couple of times. So anyway, Chicky Charlie would come in there and hop up on her bed, and she'd feed him something. So anyway, one day, every day. The one day, our preacher, Reverend Rudkin from the Federated Church in Placerville, came out to visit Grandma, and while he was out there talking to Grandma, she hadn't lived too much. She didn't have much time to live after that. But he came in, and he was talking to her, and this chicken came in, jumped up on the bed, and so the next Sunday, and at the church, Federated Church in Placerville, Reverend Rudkin gave part of his sermon to talk about this dedicated chicken named Chicky Charlie that my grandma was so favorite of, that used to come and sit up on the bed. A devoted chicken. Now, it made quite a story. He preached a sermon around that, yeah.
That's interesting.
That was Chicky Charlie.
Yeah. So that was interwoven between. So you weren't completely. It was not just your mom and you and Uncle Ray and Aunt Louise. It was your grandmother was there too.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway,
she passed away while you still lived there.
Okay. So anyway, well, Grandma was there, and it was later on after my dad had been to Alaska, Canada, and came back. Anyway, he came and picked Ray and I up at school one day at Union School, where we'd gone for the last 3 years. The first thing when he picked us up at the school in the car, we said, "How's Grandma?" He said, she's gone. I mean, she's dead. Okay. So since we didn't have a phone or anything, we went on into Placerville to find a funeral director to come out and pick her up and take her away. She said, she's gone. And I said, oh, God.
Did you see her?
Huh?
Did you see her? Her body?
Yeah, of course. Wow.
Oh.
Back then we did. They in the funeral parlor in Placerville, they embalmed the body and everything, and they put her in the casket. And so we went down. We saw her in the casket. You know, first time I'd ever seen a person dead that I couldn't talk to,
Yeah.
but I did, and it just I had nightmares for a long time after that about
Do you remember how old you were?
about her being dead. You know,
How old were you then?
8.
8?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 8.
Yeah.
And nightmares about that later on that. But and then her funeral in Placerville, an open casket where people come. You do the service and the singing and all that, and you walk up and view the body. Well, I said I really don't like that much.
Wow.
Some people still do it, but I don't think it's a
I
good
don't
idea.
like it either. Especially when it gives you nightmares as a child.
But as a kid, yes.
Yeah.
So anyways, Grandma Reedy, she was a nice lady.
That was Grandma Reedy, huh? You called her.
Reedy,
You didn't call her Tilly?
huh?
She was Tilly.
You
People
call her
called
Grandma.
Tilly. Yeah. She was
Call her
Grandma.
Gra- the people knew her as Matilda.
So, so your dad, he lived long enough to see Mike and Steve, your 2 first sons born, and they were starting to call him Papa, right?
He was only 3 months old. He didn't call him anything.
Well, they didn't, yeah.
But
remember.
Mike did. Yeah, that's Papa, and that's all he knew him by ever from now on, all the rest of his life. Papa.
Yeah.
Papa died. He said. Papa died. Papa had a green Pontiac. He said,
Remember that.
Papa had a green Pontiac.
Yeah. Just, well, interesting. So, all right. So I know, just jumping around here because there was things I didn't cover. So you never, so you you went to high school. You met our mother, Jackie, and in your senior year or right after senior year in high school, you were only 18 when you got married. So
But
you
I
must
went
have
to
met,
high school in Placerville first for a while,
right.
and then and that was through the first year and a half of high school. And then I went to Sacramento, and I went to Sacramento High School for part of my sophomore year. And I went, sophomore, junior, senior. I graduated there. I was a senior. I was a senior there when I had a friend named Bill Tobin he lived down the street from us when we lived in El Dorado.
Yeah. All right. We moved to Sacramento.
And El Dorado. We lived in El Dorado before that. Down the street from us, a friend named Bill Tobin lived down there. He was just a few blocks from us. So from the time I was in 3rd grade on to the rest growing up years, Bill Tobin was a close friend. He even stayed with us for a while in Sacramento when he came to work for Western Electric. Anyway, Bill Tobin was a friend, and then later on, when Bill Tobin had a lady friend named Dottie Conrady, and Dottie's dad was in lumber, and he followed the lumber timber industry, right? And anyway, so he must have lived in Placerville for a while, and then eventually he followed Dottie around because that was his lady friend, and he finally married her about 1954, before I got married.
Yeah.
But her best friend was Jackie, your mom.
Right. Yeah. And that's all. The rest is history.
Yeah.
The rest is kind of history. So then you ended up getting married early. But so then you went into. I don't want to go too far down that path, but basically, what? So explain the military. You didn't really do military. You did. When did you join the reserve? Or whatever
Air
it was?
National Guard. I
Air National
joined that when I was about 18, I guess.
Did you know my mom then?
Yeah.
So okay. So how did that work?
No, just a weekend thing once a month.
Oh, okay. So, but it was considered military, right?
Yeah, but I'm not a veteran, I don't think. I was just
Oh, okay.
Air National Guard. It was a weekend warrior, they call us. We went out there for the weekends once a month.
Hmm. So why did you do that?
So I wouldn't get drafted.
Okay. Because the draft was on then, so that kept you from being drafted. So they would use the Air National Guard if they needed to, right?
Right, National Guard, they would activate the whole guard unit, and I would go with them. But as an individual, they wouldn't draft me individually.
Gotcha. Okay.
Same with Ray.
So then you worked during the week for the state,
Yeah,
and then you
got a state job. Yeah,
then Air National Guard once a month.
yeah. Saturday, Sunday. Yeah,
Gotcha. How long did you do that?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. There's that. Yeah.
Huh?
That kind of covers it. All right.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a lot.